Hey guys, welcome. I'm your host, Ana Jurka, and today I have the honor to be with National Soccer Hall of Famer Tab Ramos. He has vast experience as a former U.S. men's national team player and managed the under 20 team, so there's no one better than him to talk about the U.S. elimination from the Copa America. Hey Tab, thank you for your time. How are you?
Hi, Anna. My pleasure to be here on your show. And yeah, very, very good. I mean, I'm doing well. I obviously a little bit disappointed about last night, but I think it's as I'm sure we will discuss. It's something that's been brewing and something that's been coming.
How could you explain like what you felt last night after their elimination? Like I can say I'm sad, but I'm just a fan, and you know them on a personal level. Like most of these players were under you're managing. Like so how can you explain those feelings?
Well, I mean, this is football. This is how it works. I know the players personally, but at the end of the day, I am another fan. And I'm just rooting for the national team to do well. It's just that things have not been. We've been in a little bit of a roller coaster because you look at all our results, and we lost to Trinidad at the end of last year, but of course, well, we took a red card, so that's kind of what we said about that. Then we barely beat Jamaica after they took an own goal, and then the 94th or 95th minute, and we went on and then beat Mexico. So that was okay. So we forget about that one. So then we lost to Colombia 5-1. Then the team recovers and has a very encouraging game against Brazil. We did give up a lot of chances, but it was encouraging, and I think we saw the light a little bit. Then we get into this Copa America, and then we have an average performance against Bolivia. We win 2-0 against the worst team. Then we lose to Panama, but of course there's a red card. So and then we lose last night again, and then there's just this has been brewing. When you see a team that's been together for this long, this is a project, let's say, of 5 or 6 years, and you're constantly doing this up and down of no, we're going to be okay. This is the last time that we have a result like this, and I think it's too much. I think it's gotten to the point now where we see that this team is actually has not been moving forward. This team has not been making progress, and unfortunately, when that happens, some changes have to be made.
Yeah, and talking about that, because if we see the first game, if we watch the first game against Bolivia, I thought like they should win at least 3-0, right? Because Bolivia is just like they are struggling bad. They've been struggling for years. They haven't qualified to the World Cup in how long, and they have won one game in the past 27 years at Copa America. So it was kind of like, okay, you have 3 points in the first one, then 3 points, or maybe even a draw. Like since you already know Panama, you're used to playing against them. You don't taking them lightly, but you know that you have the talent to defeat them, and that way you get 6 points going on to that third game, and it didn't happen that way. Now, when it comes to the refereeing, I know that there was horrible, bad. Everyone knows that it was bad refereeing, but I want to ask you, till what point do we like kind of like give them like an extra poor things or sympathy because of the bad refereeing? And I'm telling you this because like you want to compare them to the teams that are doing actually really really good, and whenever, let's say, Argentina had bought bad refereeing and they were losing at finals, they were smashing them. Like they would crush Messi, pecho frio. He cannot win with us, and it was bad. It was brutal, but that doesn't happen with the U.S. So I'm thinking, do you think that there is a point where you will actually have to tell the players something too, and not just the refereeing or the coach?
No, well, I mean, every once in a while you're going to have poor refereeing, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's going to affect you, and you're going to lose games, and sometimes you lose your job because of it, and it can happen. So, yeah, of course, you can complain about the refereeing, but yesterday when you look at the game, had it been a game that we dominated the whole time, or we created tons of chances, where we scored goals that were called back, and you know this was not the case. I mean, last night the U.S. team didn't create any chances to score in a game that it had to win, coming off a game
Mhm.
that they lost against an inferior opponent, coming off a game before that in which they only beat 2-0 a team that, like you said, had only won one game, in however many years. So I do think that at times, players need to be a little bit more focused on the refereeing, but I don't think last night is one of those games that were because at the end of the day, that might have been a bad call on the offsides because even for us, doing the game, it was very difficult for us to make the call because the lines, that we saw sort of what you saw. The lines on the field don't add up, and then the coverage of one camera and the
Yeah.
other camera, the whole thing was a mess. But having said that, had the U.S. not been scored on and made a goal, they still wouldn't have qualified. Panama went on and did what they're supposed to do. They won their game 3-1. The U.S. could not win the game that they needed to win. So there's where you are. We're where we're supposed to be right now, and we just have to be more focused on fixing.
What are your thoughts on how the feelings are being managed in this team? And I ask you that because that Timothy Wea, like we know him as a kind of like calm guy, right? Like he wouldn't do what he did. Like he was reacting to the frustration because he was coming from a bad refereeing call against Matt Turner with Ivan Barton that was horrible. Another referee that shouldn't even be refereeing. And then we see last night Pulisic being way too emotional and like firm, but in an escalated way with the referee till the point that at the end of the game he was actually like telling him whatever he was telling him, and he goes and tries to shake his hand. And I'm not defending the referee. That was really, 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 really bad of him. But we also have to think about what we can control, right? So, what are your thoughts on the emotions around the team and how are they being managed?
Yeah, I mean, it's those are things that need to be addressed. That always depends on the coach, whether the coach wants to make a big deal out of those, or whether coach just for whatever reason avoids those issues. It seems like this team, for whatever reason, has taken a couple of red cards that have affected the team a lot. So it certainly seems to be a little bit of an issue. But when you look at the actual players, you look at Serginho Dest's red card last year in the game they lost,
Mhm.
and Serginho is really not a player that normally gets a red card. When you look at Tim Weah, as you described before, he's not a player
Yeah.
that is normally going to get a red card. So I think those are just reactions that sometimes can happen in the game. I think we need to be a little bit smarter about how we handle those, and I think sometimes players, in particular players that are young, they learn with their experiences, and unfortunately, this time, in Tim's case, he's making the team pay for it, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is a team sport, and the rest of the team has to pick up the slack when these things happen. Um, Unfortunately, they couldn't, and here we are.
Do you, I have to ask you, do you think that changing Greg Berhalter is the right decision and the best that can happen to this team moving forward?
Well, let me go back a little bit. So first, Greg Berhalter was hired about 6 years ago, and when he was hired, it's not like I was a big supporter of the hire. But yet, after a national team coach gets hired, I think all we can do is support the coach and do what we can to support him and making sure that that we support the team and that we're fans of the team and that at the same time we're judging how progress is going along. So we got all the way to the 2022 World Cup. 2022 World Cup was really no better than any other team we've had in the past. It sort of got to the same, um, and and after the World Cup is over, I was certainly not a supporter of bringing the coach back. I think it was time for a new cycle. I thought, okay, this team did okay, but it did only just like every other team. And if we're calling this team the golden generation, as it's been called a few times, I think we need to do a little bit better than that. So I think maybe changing the coach would be a good idea. That was my opinion at the time. Well, U.S. Soccer decided to bring the coach back. I got on board with that, and I even said on TV, hey, you know what? This is the coach. We have to support him. I know a lot of fans were disappointed with me saying that, but that's the fact. Once you hire the coach, you have to support the coach. But
Mhm.
now here we are, 2 years removed almost from the World Cup, and there's still no progress. And now here, we're almost 6 years into a project that's just not improving. And I think it's at this point we have really nothing else. There's no big games coming up. We have Panama, New Zealand, and Canada coming up in September. Those are not huge games. No disrespect to those teams. Two of them are
Yeah.
in the quarterfinals of Copa America, but these are not the games we necessarily get better with. So how else is a team going to get better if what we've had so far for 5 years it hasn't? And so I do. I think it's time to make a change. I think everybody pretty much across the board is on the same page with that. I think we need at this point somebody to come in to take this as a only as a 18 to 24 month project going into the World Cup, and someone that has experience in the World Cup, that knows how to play that tournament, and that's going to have these players ready to do the best they can and get the most out of them for that tournament.
And lastly, Tab, because I know you have to leave. Lastly, um, I feel that the guys are so good, like they don't even know how good they are, and it seems to me, and this is just a feeling, that they they would feel guilty or bad about seeing Berhalter go. I feel like that beautiful feeling, like with their coach, like supporting their coach, it's clouding their minds. Maybe they don't want to get out of that comfort zone, because they are even there in their seats, and they know that they're just like they will have another call, like there will be in the next roster. Like I miss Sendejas. I feel like this team needs a little bit, street smart, and sometimes I feel like they don't have that. So you that know them, what would you tell them, like right now, if you had them in front and they are feeling like we cannot let this happen, we cannot let them fire Bill Harter because we did it, we came short, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, at this point, the players did the best they could under the circumstances. I think if they were happy with the coach, as they say, because that's what we hear. Obviously, if they were happy with the coach, then I think they already worked as hard as they could. But working as hard as they could, still this month gave us a 5-1 loss to Colombia. A 2-1 loss to Panama, a 1-1 tie with Brazil, in which Brazil had 25 shots on goal. I mean, so that's not working. So at this point, I think the main thing to address to the players is, look, at this point, it's nobody's fault, but this is not working. Whatever we're doing is not working, so we have to do something different. And I think everybody's in agreement with that.
Thank you, Tab. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being live with me.
Thank you for having me on.
Bye, Tab. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Bye. It's not working, so we have to do something different. And I think everybody's in agreement with that.